Talent drives our global economy. The skills people bring to their daily work can help businesses thrive. Is it true that everyone is born with certain talent? Or are talents the pure result of hard work? Let's decode the myths and misconceptions about talent. Welcome to PhD with Woman on It, Hack the Future. My name is Beata Young, and today's PhD Positivity Hack delivered will be by our guest, Erica Carder. Topic: how to build and believe in your talent, leading your professional journey. Episode 169 starts here. Let me remind you, this is a grassroots community that focuses on women on IT, an inclusive forum of women in technology, startups, and female leaders who are supported by men as well. And I bring heart to that hustle because empathy is my mojo, and empathy is critical when you're building and believing in your talent. First, let me mention things that's been happening in the world. Big win for Laura Muller, Formula One's first female race engineer with monogram has a F1. Huge moment for motorsports and women breaking into male-dominated fields. More representation, more leadership, more history in the making. Let's push harder for women in STEM, aviation, and motorsport until breakthroughs like this aren't news, they are the norm. Congrats, Laura. Keep making waves. We are also thrilled to celebrate another historic milestone in the world of sports. For the first time ever, the NHL, a game featured two female coaches facing off against each other. Washington versus Seattle, Emily Natske versus Jessica Campbell. A win for hockey, a win for female representation. Let's keep breaking barriers, one step at a time. And finally, cheers to our former PhD guest Charlotte Fuller on the release of her new book, The Achievement Algorithm: Unlocking the Code for Sustainable Leadership. We are excited to see it making an impact. Grab your copy on Amazon. Now let's go back to our topic, how to build and believe in your talent, leading your professional journey. Have you ever considered how the loss of a job could turn into your greatest opportunity for growth? While losing employment can be a challenging experience, or not getting the job you want can be a challenging time, it is often serving as a powerful moment for self-discovery and advancement. Join us for this PhD as we engage with Erica Maureen Carder, co-founder of Talent Build Ventures. With a proven track record in talent acquisition and process improvement, Erica possesses expertise in scaling teams and building impactful professional networks. Whether you're facing a job change or aiming for new heights, these episodes will inspire you to take control of your career journey. So, Erica, let's ask you and check where you are in this fascinating building of yours. Where are you joining us from?
Well, I'm in New York. This background may be in California, not really sure. Do love it though. It makes me feel a little bit cheery on a semi-sunny but cold, dreary day here.
Well, we can definitely say you've got a talent for choosing your background. And according to Tom Rath, author of StrengthsFinder 2.0, talent is a natural way of thinking, feeling, or behaving. And when talent is combined with this investment of time to practice, it becomes your strength. Similarly, psychologist Dan Keith Simonton says talent is a package of personal characteristics that helps you acquire expertise or enhance your performance quickly. Meanwhile, psychologist Angela Duckworth also acknowledges the existence of natural abilities and emphasizes the importance of grit in relation to talent. The idea that perseverance might be more critical than your natural abilities. Is that so?
I actually kind of do agree with that. I believe that you have your natural abilities to do certain tasks and certain assignments, but at the same time, like your ability to kind of push through tasks, especially if they're harder than what you're used to doing, is really that grit that you bring to whether it's your personal life or your professional life. So I definitely
Mm.
do agree with it.
Great. Well, one of the movies that I liked is Up in the Air, starring George Clooney as Ryan Bingham, who each week visits the office of various company and lets people go for a living. In his own words, I don't work here. I work for another company that lends me out to the boss who doesn't have the balls to sack their own employees. So one of your career changes was actually letting people go off. So
Mhm.
I'm fascinating. What led you to this career, and how is it for you?
Sure. So it's not necessarily letting people go in that context. So a company makes a decision to have a layoff. They usually need additional support. Those conversations are pretty difficult in general. And at the same time, individuals that are being laid off are in shock. So, what we offer is a way to help companies have those hard discussions, but then we take those employees, and if they're willing, we help guide them to their next career journey. So we look at it in more of a positive route. I think that many of us get stuck in the work that we're doing currently, and we don't necessarily think about like what we could be doing. And that's where we come in. Like you might have had a job in accounting and you hated it. How do you then transfer those skills to other areas? And how can you take what you possess as your ability to do certain things and leverage it on your resume and then how you speak about it out at an interview or at a networking event? So I like to say that we take a negative experience and we try to make it a more positive one for outplaced employees.
Mm. What unique characteristic or talent one has to have to possess this position? I mean, there are certain things that are critical. Empathy is one of them,
Mhm.
right?
Yes. So you do have to have a lot of empathy. With what I'm doing, you do need to have a background in HR or employment law to kind of understand what those conversations are going to be and how to navigate them, especially when they do go south. You need to have an ability to lead individuals after and really build their confidence and growth in themselves. And also have an understanding of how to navigate unemployment because unemployment is not an easy task within the US. It's pretty complicated in some states. So it's taking the complicated process and then breaking it down for someone to understand.
You are a mother of two, so out for those who are mothers and want to make sure that their children have a good talent, what would be your approach to develop these talents?
That's a good question. Um, Talents for this job of what I'm doing or just talents in general?
Talents in general, because we end up finishing schools and have higher education, and still so many of our children do not know what to do. I remember
Mhm.
when I went with my daughter for her 18th birthday as a special treat. She wanted to go to Barcelona, and we went there and we were sitting on the roof terrace of some restaurant, and I was like, right, so you're 18, tell me, in 10 years time, what is your dream job? What you gonna do? And she told me, well, I want to develop my talent as a makeup artist.
Okay. Okay.
Which
Um,
was, great idea. This is something that she's seen Instagram so much of. However, the future proof jobs are so difficult to obtain and so difficult for youngsters to understand. So I'm wondering, how would you as a mother approach my 18 years old child who thought the only way to make a career is to be an influencer or a makeup artist?
So I think there's a few pieces there. In general, with children, I believe that you really have to teach them how to be adaptable in our society, because careers change, but also the work and how you do the work changes as we get older. Like, I can remember doing a lot of tasks manually that are now done by AI, and then having to adapt and learn, what does AI necessarily mean for my work, and how do I leverage it in order to be ahead of the market. The other skill that I think is really important is really teaching self-confidence and the ability to believe in oneself. And why I say that is, there are a lot of people who not only lack self-confidence, but they lack the ability to think through what they're capable of doing because they don't believe they can do it. If your daughter wants to be a makeup artist, she can be a makeup artist, but she has to choose the route of, how do I become a makeup artist? And then how do I make money from being a makeup artist? Because I think that's the second piece. A lot of kids go to school for photography. Not everyone's going to be a famous photographer, but you could still make money in that field if you learn business skills. So teaching your kids how to leverage growing a business, or how to leverage networking, or how to leverage learning how to take a product and bring it to life. Those are things that can help you navigate a career that you don't necessarily have to be an influencer for. Yes, being an influencer, there's many people out there that are doing it, but it's not as easy as it looks. And I think that teaching kids that there are other ways to make money, and not everyone is going to be a famous influencer, and identifying what are the steps that you need to take will help your children figure out what they can do with what they're passionate about doing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Erica. That instills a lot of confidence in my daughter. She's definitely choosing a different path now. We have a comment from IPO Vid in Patrick's opinion. Terrific book, excellent film, up in the air. I agree. I'd love to watch it again because it's a great comedy as well. Now, it is difficult to really face being let go of a company and be still confident in your abilities, because the truth is you end up unemployed and not sure how to pay for your bills. How do you approach this challenge?
Yeah. So there's two pieces to this. I think that we are a society that does overspend. We don't necessarily take into account our financial well-being throughout our day-to-day. We're just going, many of us paycheck to paycheck, trying to figure out, like, where is the next dollar going to come? And I do think that having some additional financial wellness, or starting to learn about how to handle your finances, especially when you have a downturn, is the best time to learn, because we take ourselves in a way that we forget how to manage things throughout time. So what I mean by that is, you might become really good at managing a very tight budget when you're laid off. But then once you get a job, you go right back to the way that you were prior, instead of putting a little extra away. So when an incident like this does happen, which is becoming more common in our day-to-day lives, unfortunately, more companies overhire, or they inflate their earnings and then realize they don't have enough earnings and have to let people go, that there always has to be a backside where you feel that you are safe and having a little bit of time to reevaluate your skills. In the situation where, you know what, you are paycheck to paycheck, you're worried about your next check coming in or your next role coming in, one, I tell people take a breather and really evaluate what do you want in your next company and in your next role. Do you still want to continue doing the work that you are currently doing, or do you want to make a pivot? Because if you do want to make a pivot, chances are it's going to take a little bit longer to find those roles, and can you sustain it? The next thing that I tell people is it's time to network. And it's not just applying for a job. Like, yes, you need to do that, and you need to make sure it's a numbers game. So apply as many times as you can to as many roles that are equivalent to what you are looking for. But it is also then reaching out to your network, reaching out to companies you're interested in and finding people that you can speak to, and then taking that and starting to build a plan of how you're going to get your next role very quickly. And sometimes I even tell individuals, like, let's say you were in an operational role and you have a little bit of time to your next role. It's okay to go get a part-time position somewhere or go work in a flower shop if you were always interested in flowers and you want to learn about it as you're waiting for your next role to appear. Like, don't worry about taking like a step back or trying something new when you have an opportunity to do it, because this is an opportunity for growth. And that's what I rather people focus on, is not the fear of how you're going to pay your bills, because yes, I get it. Paying your bills is the most important. Making sure you have food on the table for your kids is the most important. But it is also important that you take a second, figure out what you want, what you need, what's going to help you get to that next stage before just diving into it. Because a lot of people just dive into it and then get back into a bad toxic work environment again, or get into a company where their values don't match. And then they have a very short lifespan at that company instead of actually being invested in the work that's being done.
Great advice on soft skills and the value of networks at all, Erica, says Patrick again. Now, I wanted to ask you, have you ever lost a job, Erica?
So I haven't necessarily lost a job. I have been in a position where a job told me that I had like 3 months before my last day. So I had some planning time for it. I have watched many of my friends, though, within especially my industry of HR, get really hard hit in 2023 and 2024. That I understand how hard it can be, and especially in the situation where you realized you were overspending because you never thought that you were going to be let go, and then all of a sudden it comes as a shocker. And I've worked with people to kind of say, okay, like, how can we stretch the money that we have? What do we need to do? Is there opportunities to reduce any of your spending? So, unfortunately, there's times where people have to move back in with family, or there's times where they have to say, hey, like, we're going to have to downsize our home, or we're going to have to downsize our living expenses. So that means not eating out or doing the extracurricular activities that our kids love to do for a short period of time until we have it.
If anything, I wanted to ask you, I'm sorry, I think I was muted. What did it teach you? What this experience of losing or being close to lose a job teach you?
It taught me that you're always dispensable, honestly. When you're working for yourself, which I now do, I kind of dictate my earning. I dictate the work that I'm doing and how I'm doing it, when I'm doing it, my work-life balance, where when I was an employee, I was at their disposal of like when deadlines were due and when items were due. And uh, decisions that were made at a higher level that I was not a part of. So I think overall, it taught me that you have to be resilient in the market we are in now, but also thinking through what do I need to do to ensure that my future is my future and no one is controlling my future for the future. I know that's a little play on words, but
Oh, absolutely. And you have to hug the future, as our tagline goes. Olga Vasina is making a comment. She's saying that's fascinating advice to stay employed. It's a worry people don't think this way in HR or management in Europe. I fear maintaining a lesser job while seeking to be in the right job. Great show, ladies. Loving PhD as always, Beata and Erica, says Olga. Thank you so much, Olga, for your support. So many people stay in jobs they hate because they fear the unknown. What's the biggest myth about job security that keeps people stuck?
honestly, it's the money at the end of the day, making sure that if you look at the Maslow's pyramid, you need to have your most basic needs met. But in our society, it's not just our basic needs because there are so many additional things that we need in general to feel fulfilled. And we think that fulfillment comes from all those items. And so, what I would say is you have to figure out what is really going to bring you value. We only live once and we live for a very short time in a very short period of time when you are employed, honestly. And so if you are so unhappy with what you're doing, you need to take a step back and realize what can you do and what kind of work can you pivot towards. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, let's say you work at a fast food chain and all you do is a cashier. Well, you're managing money. You could go be a bank teller. You could go do other things where you're working on customer service. You just have to identify how you can translate those skills. And in the US, a lot of companies are moving away from requiring a bachelor's degree now. And I think that that is also a great thing for many people who feel like, well, I have no skills. You do have skills, you do have opportunities out there. You need to be able to figure out how do you identify those opportunities and then how do you seize those opportunities.
How do you seize these opportunities? And here is another opportunity to have your questions answered, dear ladies and gentlemen. We have another question from Desiree, who's asking, is there any tips for someone who wanted to discover their talent, even if they feel talentless?
So no one is talentless at all.
Good.
We all have talents and we all have skill sets that you may not even think is a skill set, but you have it. And what I say to all of our outplaced employees and our clients is take a step back and have a reflection moment. Walk through what you're good at and why you're good at those things. And if you tell me that you are not good at anything, you need to take another moment and really think through. You might be good at, taking care of a home. That's okay. That is a skill. Not everyone can do it. Okay, if you can do that, what else can you do if you could take care of a home? What goes into taking care of a home? You have to manage logistics. You have to manage um, the items that you have within your home. You have to manage uh, what I like to say, if you have children, you're employees because children are like employees sometimes. You have to look at all the things that you do on a regular basis and then identify how can that then be transferable to something else. Everyone has talents. And if you feel still that you are talentless, identify a way that you can learn a new talent or a new skill. It could be an online course. It could be reading different books and then trying out that skill. There are many ways to get the talents you need, but if you're thinking, well, I just want to be a high power executive, that high power executive started out at the bottom too, and they worked their way up. So you always have to remember you're working your way towards something.
You're working your way towards something, and one of the uh, talents we want many women to pursue is definitely leadership skills. Do you agree with me?
It depends. It depends on what you're defining as leadership skills. Are you defining it as the way that you communicate with others, or are you defining it as moving up the chain and how you manage a team and manage even a business?
I believe it's a lot of confidence in yourself, but also it is as you mentioned, it is about climbing up the ladder. However, there are ways to do it without being pursued as somebody who's pushing others, right?
Mhm.
Because the true leadership comes from someone who is supporting others, not necessarily just thinking about their own career.
So I will say this about leadership, especially for women in general. Don't be afraid to be yourself, and don't be afraid if you have to be pushier than someone else to be pushier than someone else. I think that, women have a certain persona that we believe that we need to be a certain way within the workplace. The truth is, we need to step into our full confidence in the work that we're doing. And it's not just doing the work, but knowing how to delegate the work, which is very, very hard for many women to do. And it's learning how to communicate with individuals that you may not necessarily do on a normal basis. Like, you might not communicate with someone who is more introverted than you. You may not know how to do that. You have to figure out, how do I talk to somebody and navigate that discussion in order for that discussion to be successful at the end for both parties. And I think that that's a big part of the leadership of how people move up the ladder. It's not really about your skill sets, unfortunately. It's about how well liked you are and how well you are able to manage conflict resolution and delivery of items at the end of the day.
And networking is also part of the successful
Mm-hmm.
leaders. So
Yes, yeah.
tell me, how do you suggest for somebody who feels talentless, as mentioned by Desiree, and wants to build confidence? How would you advise them how to start to network? Not necessarily offline, because we covered that with Kelly Howie and with previous guests, but really for somebody who's working remotely and wants to build network, for
Mm-hmm.
example, LinkedIn, what would you advise to them?
Sure. So I think one thing that we forget about in our everyday lives is networking is every conversation we have. And a lot of times we as humans are just scared, especially adults. Kids, I don't see it as much in. They'll walk up to somebody and say, hey. Um, it's being willing to have uncomfortable conversations or be uncomfortable in knowing that you might be turned down by someone that you're trying to have a conversation with, just to have the conversation. There was a period of time when I had posted, and I can't remember if it was LinkedIn or it was Instagram, it was one of the platforms, and I said, I'm a founder, and founder life can be lonely. I would love to just have founder chats with other founders to kind of learn how you're going through your day to day. It's not an opportunity to try to sell me on anything or me to sell you on my product. It's just to learn from each other. And I can't tell you how many conversations that I randomly had with founders, and one ended up leading me to one of my leads. And with that being said, I think that, you know, if you strike up conversations just on the regular on your outside life, it's easier to strike up conversations in your work life because you start to get very comfortable with just having a normal conversation about the weather or where you are going within your career. And a lot of people just want to talk about themselves too. So being able to just ask people, like, how did you do this? Or where did you start? Or, hey, like, I'm having a hard time getting through this task. How would you do this? People are always really happy to just tell you how they would do it, whether you agree with them or not. So I would say, long answer short, just start having small conversations with random people in order to start building up your networking skills because you never know who you may meet and what they may lead you to. And then if you are an individual who loves to post online or you really want to start posting online, think of a topic that you can post about on a regular cadence. And I'm not saying every day because doing it every day at the beginning, you burn out. I burned out. I totally know what that's like. But just being able to go up and post or posting a comment to someone on LinkedIn that posted something that you feel really strongly about. And I'm not saying to do it in a mean way or do it in a way where you just completely say you disagree with it. But if there are posts where you agree with the content and you want to start a discussion with that individual, it's a great opportunity to do that.
It's a great opportunity to network in the online world. Now we have a comment from Jane, who's eager to network with us. She says, agree, it's a miss or hit on learning new skills. Now, speaking of skills, next week we're going to have a discussion about AI. So, Erica, you mentioned one of the skills, transferable skills, is automation. So why do you believe automation is the future for talent building?
So where I think automation is going to come in with talent is it's going to be how do you know how to leverage these platforms? How do you know how to take information, digest it, and then fact check it, as well as build upon it? AI is not going away. And what I'm seeing, it's just getting smarter and smarter that it should be leveraged in the work that you're doing to help you to do your work more efficiently. So if you're able to learn about how to utilize AI and the prompts that are going to give you the answers that you really are trying to obtain, the better it will be for you as an employee and or if you decide you want to go out on your own to navigate the new way of actually learning and digesting information.
Talent is one thing, but execution is another. What separates the people who thrive in their careers from those who stay stagnant?
So I'm going to throw it back to networking because, a large part is being able to deliver and to deliver on time, but it's also how to have conversations with others. And I think that that is a big miss that people don't realize. They just think, well, if I do my job really well, I'll move up the ranks. Chances are, if you do your job really well, you're just going to get more work and not move up the ranks because they know that you can do that job really well. And it will be harder to replace you if you can do it better than somebody else coming in. So you need to be able to show how you have other skill sets that you can leverage. And a lot of times that's just having conversations with leaders, making sure that you have a presence, taking on things that, may not exactly align with your job, but is an extracurricular that's benefiting the company. That's really how I see people moving up, more so than just being really good at their job.
So would you say that introverts have it really hard way? And I mean, there is talking about neurodivergency and how some people have it very difficult, find it very difficult to network. So is there a way to change their opportunities and make sure that they also thrive in the world of hiring rather than just to be hidden in their shell?
Yeah, so I will say I'm 100% introverted than extroverted. Um, and there are definitely days where I do not want to talk to anyone. I just want to get my work done, finish it, and then move on. But I think when I especially worked for an employer, what was really important and I pushed myself to do was have random conversations with different people at the organization. And in the work that I do, it is a little bit easier because a lot of it is in HR and is in recruitment. So I am constantly talking to people, even though there's days I don't want to do any of that. But what I would say is setting up a meeting, but then setting up your mindset to go into that meeting to have a conversation with someone, even if you are just someone who's like, I really don't care about anybody else or the work they're doing, you have to feel invested. And that individual needs to feel that you are invested in them as well. And that is really the way to make a change in, just feeling introverted. In terms of hiring, I think that there are two types of people that you hire. There are people who are really, really, really good and have the skill sets that are needed to propel an organization forward. And then there are individuals who are good at the skills that are required, but are able to have those conversations that are needed. And that's really where I think there's a differentiator between hiring somebody to get a job fully done and hiring somebody that you want to see grow at an organization farther than the role that they would be currently at.
That sounds brilliant. However, for someone who's listening right now and is at the crossroads, what's the first step they should take today to move forward and develop their better career prospect?
So if they want to stay at the organization that they are at, they need to have an honest conversation with their current manager and ask, what are the skills that I am still lacking that would help me to move up in this company? And I think we have to be comfortable with knowing that at some companies, the next step might be that manager's role. And if that manager says, hey, I'm not going anywhere, it's then devising a plan on, okay, either I have to be comfortable in this role or I need to find another role within the organization where I can leverage my skill sets and learn a new skill and potentially take a step back to hopefully take a step forward maybe in a year or two. Or it's how do I go out to market for myself and start building my network in order to find my next role, whether it's doing that same skill or moving above. I know many individuals who left or worked at the same organization for 10 years, maybe moved up one level, never really got into the senior levels at all. And then the second that they moved to a new company, within a year, they got promoted. And sometimes just being comfortable with where you are is the biggest blocker for you. So you need to figure out, what do I want to do next? And if I don't get an answer that I like, then how do I change my trajectory moving forward? And a lot of times that's identifying new skills, or it's taking that leap of faith and identifying a new organization to work at.
Now, we talked a lot about female entrepreneurs, and we want to develop their skills. So, what advice would you give to females to help their career or start an entrepreneurial journey like
Sure.
yours?
So I will tell you, when you become an entrepreneur, you know nothing. You go out and you have to figure it all out from the beginning. And even if you are really good on the finance side or you're really good on the sales side, when you become your own business person or entrepreneur, you have to be good at everything, and or you have to identify individuals who are good at those skills in order to help you. And you have to understand, especially as an entrepreneur, you can't do it all. So you have to decide on what requires your attention at that moment. And then how can you leverage other individuals within your network and or that you could hire in order to help you to really get to where you're looking to go. And you have to be ready to take rejection. You have to be ready to accept that you are going to fail at some point with something, and then that's okay. In terms of, someone who just wants to grow, the first step is really identifying, what do you want to grow in? And that's having that conversation again with yourself to understand that this is what you need to learn to be able to obtain that skill, and then how can you execute on that skill? Because a lot of times we'll go and we'll read, or we'll take a course, or we'll go to a conference, and you're taking in all this knowledge, and then you forget it because you don't execute it. So then you have to identify a way of, how do I execute it? And if your skill is you want to be able to manage people effectively, because maybe you've never managed, you have to then identify what goes into being a good manager, what goes into leading other individuals to get their work done, and then are there opportunities to have an intern, to mentor somebody lower, to actually gain that skill of managing another person in order to be able to show your employer that you can potentially handle a team environment.
In a society that profits from your self-doubt, liking yourself is a rebellious act, as Caroline Caldwell says. Now, at the end of the day, what do you believe matters more? Talent, mindset, grit, or luck?
Mindset.
Mindset.
It's all
Tell me.
mindset.
Talk to me.
So you can be the most talented person, have the most grit, but if you are not in the right mindset, you're not going anywhere. So you first have to get your mindset right for when you're ready to move on or ready to do something new.
What was your mindset when you started?
I started my own career, as in entrepreneurship.
Yep.
I wanted to help others, and I wanted to get out of a toxic work environment. And so I knew that where I was mentally was not where I wanted to be. And in order to accept that I was going to be on my own, I was going to be alone, I was going to be figuring out hard things that I've never done before, I had to put my mindset in to say, you're going to try something new and you might fail, and it's okay if you fail. And once I accepted that it's okay if I fail, I felt better at knowing that I was taking the next step. I also planned financially. Okay, I'm going to do this. I need X amount in my bank account if anything goes wrong and I decide that I need to pivot. I need to know that I'm financially safe because that's something that's important to me. So making sure that piece was set at the same time my mindset was set.
Well, we often focus on success stories, and you talk about how successful you are. What failure or setback you had in your career that you could talk about, and what you learned from it?
Sure. So I'm actually going to take something from early on in my career. Um, I was working at a hospital and I was helping with like a process improvement mapping of how patients would move throughout one of our centers. And I did a really good job on it. And an opportunity came up. The manager said, "Hey, I think you'd be really good for this opportunity. I want you to interview." And in my mind, I thought I had the role. I went through the interviews, had all the discussions, and they ended up going with somebody else. And in that moment, I was crushed. I thought, oh my God, I'm not worthy enough of doing this type of work. I'm never going to move up. And let me put it this way, I was only doing that role for about a year. So the truth was, I probably wasn't ready, even mentally, to move into a new role. I still had a lot to learn in what I was doing. But I got so caught up in I have to move up. I need to move forward in my career. I need to get to wherever I thought I needed to get to. And I had to take a step back and realize things are going to come when they come. And I have to set myself up in order to accept feedback, in order to accept not knowing what the next stage is, and to accept that I'm moving in a direction that is right for me, but it might not be at the same pace that somebody else is. And that setback early on helped me to realize that I have the control that I think I have on my life. I don't. And sometimes I just need to take a step back and say, hey, let's let life go and see where it brings us. Because the truth was, I didn't get that opportunity. But about 5 months later, through networking, I got another opportunity at the hospital that really set me up for the rest of the success that I've had in my life and the rest of the growth into even management that I had. So it all happens at the right time for you.
Oh, absolutely. Letting go of expectations is key here, because if you set your mind that you've got to get this job and this is the end of it all, that's not really helpful. We have a couple of comments. Charlotte Fuller is thanking us for the mention of her book. Ladies and gentlemen, reminder, you can acquire it on Amazon. Olga Vasina says, hope we have Jamil back on this show soon too. Indeed, Jamil will be joining us, not quite yet. Desiree says, agree, we humans as social animals, social network is really helpful and important. Absolutely. We have this opportunity to chat and network while we have this podcast, but also don't be a stranger. Send us your note if you want to appear on the channel, and don't forget to subscribe to be notified about our next episode. Now let's go to our usual set of questions, and I'm wondering, what is the number one book that you would advise yourself to read before you started your career?
Oh, okay. So I'll tell you, I don't like the name of this book. So even as like I'm sitting here, I'm like, I really don't want to actually say the name of this book because I wish they named it something else, to be quite
Let me
honest.
help you. Let me help you. I'll read it. Surrounded by Idiots by Thomas Erickson. Talk to me.
Yeah, so this book is really about communication and how you communicate with different type of people. And I read it probably about, I want to say it was about a year and a half ago, and it changed my output on like how I thought through things and how I answered questions that might come in to me as a manager and or as a leader, and how I react to people in response to it as well. Because I think that that is a big piece that we have to think through how we necessarily respond.
Mm. How we respond, and speaking of responding, how do you react when you are put in hot water? Because as Eleanor Roosevelt said, women, you never know the true strength until you put a woman in hot water. How are you
Mhm.
brewing, Erica?
So I will say I am a person, and it goes back to me being introverted. I need to take some time to kind of digest the situation before I respond to a situation. So this may feel to another individual that I am, not responding to them, but I rather be in going back to that mindset, the right mindset in order to respond. And a lot of times, if I'm in a situation where I need to respond right away, I let whomever that audience know that, hey, like, I don't want to respond just on how I'm feeling at this moment. What I'd like to do is come back to you in a day or so after I've digested it, and then tell you how I'm feeling or how I think we should go about this. So it's okay not to answer somebody right when you are in hot water, but let them know, hey, like, let me think about this first.
It's interesting because many companies, when they are letting people go, want to hear the answer immediately, right?
No, no. A lot of companies, when they're letting people go, well, it depends. If you're talking about signing a severance letter,
Yeah.
they do definitely push you to try to sign it right away. Depending on the state you're in, though, you don't have to sign things right away, and you should always get a lawyer to look over documentation just to ensure that it is not only legal but ethical as well in the way and manner that they're thinking through it. Um, but normally they don't ask you questions on like how you're feeling or like why you did something in a certain situation, because at that point they've already made their decision. There's no additional decision happening at that point. They're not going to take back the firing. I've never heard of a company take back layoffs or firing after they've already made that decision and went through the process of saying, hey, we're going to let you go. Before they let you go, they might give you an opportunity to kind of tell them why something wasn't done, but they're not necessarily going to let you know that the next stage is you're going to be let go in a day or so.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, and definitely not responding immediately is the way to go. Speaking to a lawyer or advisor is the way to go before you sign any legal document. Now,
Yeah.
let's go to our other question, which is, let's imagine you could meet anyone and go to have a private breakfast anywhere in the world. Who would you choose, and where would you go to have that private breakfast?
So it would be Martha Stewart. I find her fascinating. I find her role fascinating of how she moved up, how she did many career pivots herself, and how she really branded herself. And where it would be her farmhouse in Connecticut. I've seen pictures of it. I've seen videos of her garden, and I, although am not a very good gardener, would love to just like go and pick my own vegetables and then make lunch from it. So she would definitely be the person that I would meet with.
Beautiful. And what would be the questions? Would you ask about gardening, cooking, or interior design?
I think that I would focus it on her growth and what she learned at the different stages of her life,
And
and how that then affected the way that she not only managed, but she transformed herself. Because there were many opportunities where she wouldn't have gotten to the point where she did unless she persevered and really set her mindset to the right path that she needed to be on.
definitely, she's a successful woman, and I know that it's going to go a great segue to your quotation. So, can you please give us your life lesson quote and how did it change you?
Sure. So it would definitely be Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. And I think that that sums up personally my life. It sums up the way that I think about business. And it sums up the way that I think about growth as an individual.
If you could give our listeners one bold challenge or a piece of actionable advice to help them in their career, what would it be?
I would say after this discussion today, I would love for everyone to take a moment, sit down, and really think through what they want. And I don't mean just in their career, it's also in their personal life. It's figuring out what steps they would need to take to be the person that they want to be. And somebody once said to me, you know, and I have done this, and I did it for a class back in graduate school, and it was enlightening. It was write your own obituary and what you want in it, and then read it out loud in front of a mirror. And we actually had to read it out loud in class. And it was so interesting where I put emphasis on things that would be, I thought, important to me in the future. And now looking back at it, I definitely put family as like my number one item in that obituary. Um, and I think that when I decided to start my own career in entrepreneurship, it was based on wanting to be with my family more and being more present and being more active in the discussions that were happening every day with my children, and being able to be active in the discussions that I was having with my mom and my siblings. And that then resonated when I read it 5 years later. I found it randomly on my computer. But I would say to people, take a second, write what you want to be known for, how you think you're going to get there, and where you are currently, and what's that gap. Because that's going to help you figure out with that gap part where you need to go next.
And that's a beautiful way of defining your talents. Tremendous amounts of talent are lost to our society just because that talent wears a skirt, as Shirley Chisholm says. Erica, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. Your work is not only transforming the digital landscape, but also paving the way for many successful, talented people. We're all living here today feeling inspired, and that's it from episode 169 of the PhD livestream. Thanks to our guest, Erica Carder. To stay updated and ensure you never miss Positivity Hack Delivered, follow Woman on It and turn on notifications. Next week, we have Jess Schultz, and we're going to talk about everything you need to know about go-to-market strategies. Thank you so much to our lovely audience who were IPO Vit, Desiree Lumen, Olga Vasina, and Jane. And finally, as always, our positivity quote comes from Positive Thinking Only and goes, look for something positive in each day, even if some days you have to look a little bit harder. And if you don't like something, change it. If you can't change it, change your attitude. As Maya Angelou says, today is your day to hack the future, hack the positivity you want, hack the talent you want. Thank you.